it feel pretty raw.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. Drivers on the M4 eastbound between Junction 28 Tredegar Park and Junction 26 Malpas face 2 lanes restricted due to an incident. In Kingston upon Hull, congestion persists on the A63 westbound between the A1079 and the junction with the A15, expected to clear after 10. In Thurrock, a road collision has caused lane closures at the M25 anti-clockwise exit slip at junction 30, with normal conditions anticipated before 11. And on the trains, major disruptions are affecting cross-country and Greater Anglia services, with no trains to or from Stansted Airport. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I've got dressed up as a pilot sitting in an actual real-life Spitfire. This is not just a simulator, this is a real-life Spitfire that's been kitted out to do simulations here at the Spitfire Centre in Blackpool. John Puttock joins us now. You're the engineering lead here, and this is quite a fancy bit of kit, and really, I guess, you know, lets people experience what those pilots would have done 85 years ago.
Absolutely. This aeroplane, is part of the hangar display with here at Blackpool, and Andy Harper, our specialist, actually put this aeroplane together and has enabled it to act and behave exactly like a real aircraft would. And it's available to the public to come up and have a go and see if they can fly a Spitfire.
And tell us about the significance of this aircraft 85 years ago, the Battle of Britain. Things start to turn in Britain's favour.
Absolutely. This is a Mark V Spitfire. Early days they were using the Mark II, and that aircraft had 8 Browning machine guns firing 303 bullets. This Mark V actually incorporated some 20mm Hispano cannons, and so gave the aircraft a lot more punch and enabled it to be more successful.
And I've got all of this gear on. A lot of it is kind of fur and real thermal stuff. That's because the temperature up there at the height, at the altitude that they were flying, was absolutely freezing.
Absolutely. I mean, the higher you go, then obviously the colder it gets. But if you're at around about 25,000 feet, you're going to be experiencing temperatures of between minus 25 and 30. There is no heating in the aircraft, so from that point of view, the only way you're going to stay warm is to dress for it. So, as the Queen once said, there's no such thing as the wrong weather, it's just the wrong clothing.
The People's Channel.
Well, good morning. It's 9:30 a.m. on Friday, the 3rd of October, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Alex Armstrong, and Miriam Cates.
Well, the Home Secretary has urged pro-Palestine protesters to stand down in the wake of yesterday's Manchester synagogue terror attack, saying that yesterday's demonstrations were dishonourable.
We don't want our Jewish community here in Britain to have to live a smaller Jewish life because of the fear of anti-Semitism.
And Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick also condemned the protests.
I thought the protests last night were deeply disrespectful and should not have gone ahead. But just do the decent thing and go home.
Of course, this was the suspected Islamist attack that saw 2 Jewish people killed and 3 others injured on Yom Kippur, the most holy day of their religious calendar.
Victims have been named as 53-year-old Adrian Dolby, and 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz.
Well, police have also identified the man they believe carried out the attack as 35-year-old Jihad al-Shami, a British man of Syrian descent.
We're live on the scene with all the latest updates as the investigation into yesterday's horrific attack continues.
I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve. starting with a more visible police presence, protecting your community.
The Prime Minister promises to protect the Jewish community, but Israel blames Sir Keir Starmer for the attack for failing to curb a toxic wave of anti-Semitism. Earlier, we spoke to the Deputy Foreign Minister for the State of Israel.
Where are the values, the British values? It's absolutely ridiculous. There has to be enforcement. There has to be deterrence. People needs to be persecuted.
Elsewhere, the next Archbishop of Canterbury is set to be unveiled in the next half an hour, with 2 women among the frontrunners for the first time in the role's 1,400-year history.
Yeah, I don't know about you at home, but I saw the images of the protests last night. I mean, first of all, the thugs in London, 40 arrests on a night that people should have been grieving, not just because it was a Jewish attacked community, but it was an attack on all of us. It was an attack on Britain. This was a terrorist attack on Britain, and people thought they would go out jubilantly protesting.
It's just unimaginable that people would think that that was a good thing to do. Of course we have the right to protest in this country. Of course that's part of our democracy. Of course people can have different opinions. But it's just inhuman to do that on a day when so many are grieving. And so many Jews have been saying for so long, well, at least 2 years, that they don't feel safe in this country anymore. And yesterday those fears were proven to be right.
Yeah, I just cannot imagine what it would take for someone on a day like that, also on the holiest day of the year for Jewish people, to go out and start protesting, screaming things like "from the river to the sea." It's just vile. These are vile people, in my opinion. They talk about unity all the time. They talk about peace, but they're the ones stirring up hatred on the streets, in my opinion. I hope we're going to see the Prime Minister condemn the far-left thuggery we saw last night. But I'm not going to hold my breath, Miriam.
And of course, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, has said that they shouldn't go ahead, but she's got no power to stop them going ahead. And I think it does really cut to the heart of this debate about free speech. If incitement to violence is illegal, why aren't the police policing that across all different protests equally?
Well,
we'd love to know what you think, so do send your views and comments to gbnews.com/your say.
But first, here's your 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Alex, thank you very much. The top stories. The 2 men killed in a terror attack on a synagogue in Manchester have been named by police. 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz and 53-year-old Adrian Dolby were killed when a man carried out the attack outside the synagogue in Crumpsall yesterday morning. TikTok's algorithm recommends pornography and highly sexualized content to children's accounts, according to a new report by a human rights campaign group. Prince William says change is on my agenda when he becomes king, in his most open and personal explanation to date about how he sees his future role and the future of the monarchy. Storm Amy has been upgraded from a yellow to an amber warning for large parts of North and West Scotland. The Met Office has warned of widespread winds reaching 60 and 70 miles per hour, with more exposed areas seeing gusts in excess of 95 miles per hour. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning and welcome. This is Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates.
Well, breaking news in the last few moments. The Met Police have urged pro-Palestine organisers to cancel or delay protests in the wake of the Manchester synagogue terror attack.
Well, this was echoed by the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who said that yesterday's demonstrations were un-British. She spoke to GB News earlier.
Those messages are utterly disgraceful. They are fundamentally un-British in nature, as far as I'm concerned. I would have wanted to see people in this country, step back from protesting for at least a few days, just to give the Jewish community here a chance to process what has happened.
Comes as Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick brands the protests as deeply disrespectful, telling demonstrators to go home.
I thought the protests last night were deeply disrespectful and should not have gone ahead. Look, just do the decent thing and go home. do not incite hatred. As for the protests at the weekend, do the decent thing, cancel these protests, enable the British Jewish community to grieve and to mourn, not to worry as they go about their daily lives.
Well, the victims killed in that synagogue attack in Crumpsall yesterday have been named as 53-year-old Adrian Dalby and 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz.
It comes as Greater Manchester Police say there will be an increased police presence throughout the region. Let's cross live to Crumpsall now. GB News' North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper is there to give us the latest.
Well, good morning to you both. You're absolutely right, of course. We're here on the scene where about 100 yards behind us and just to the right is the Heaton Park Synagogue, where yesterday, in fact, exactly 24 hours ago, the attacker was being shot by armed GMP officers, bringing an end to that horrific terror attack. Now, 24 hours on, this is a community that is still in shock. We've spoken to local residents today who say they are shocked by what's happened, although many of the Jewish faith say they're not surprised that this has happened. This is something that they say they've been anticipating for 2 years since the October 7th attacks. Many have also gathered here at the cordons of the police tape in order to show their respects and lay flowers for the two men who died in yesterday's attacks. We of course now know their names: Adrian Dalby, age 53, and Melvin Kravitz, age 66. Earlier we had the opportunity to speak to one local resident who'd come down today to lay flowers to find out exactly what had compelled him to come down this morning.
And this community is a solid community. This won't affect that. But people like me, you know, I felt compelled to come here today to make a statement and to make a stand against this sort of thing. And it's not going to drive a wedge between the different elements of this community. It's not going to do it. We're not having it.
That's Mike O'Shea you were just hearing there, a man who was born and raised just down the road from where this attack took place. And I think that mindset that he was sharing there, that mindset of not letting this impact the community and the unison between this multi-faith, multi-ethnicity area, that's something that we've seen before at kind of attacks that we've seen like this, of course, after the arena bomb in 2017, at the attack in Southport last summer. Often after things like this, communities do rally, they come together and they say that despite the intended division and terror of this kind of attack, instead they're going to come together and not let it create the division that was intended.
There was a lot of praise for the Greater Manchester Police yesterday. They arrived on scene very quickly, dealt with the situation, no doubt prevented further casualties. Has there been public support for the police force around the area where you are?
I think I would say that there has indeed, Miriam. I think we spoke yesterday, of course, on GB News about the terror attack in Manchester in 2017 with the arena bomb and the wide criticism that Greater Manchester Police faced given their response to that. And I think what really shows after yesterday's attack is the lessons learned by Greater Manchester Police and the differences and the changes that they've made in the way they do things. And that shows, doesn't it, that phone call, the initial phone call to GMP was made at 9:31. They were on the scene, a major incident declared by 9:37. The suspect shot by 9:38. So just 6-7 minutes between the incident first being called in and them taking the action that was necessary. I think as well it's worth saying that GMP's Chief Constable Stephen Watson said yesterday he also commended the bravery of the security and the worshippers at the synagogue here in Crumpsall, who they did what they could. They barricaded the doors. They prevented that attacker from getting inside where lots of worshippers had already gathered to mark Yom Kippur. He praised their bravery and their courage and said that, in fact, that by doing what they did alongside the work of Greater Manchester Police's officers, they perhaps prevented the deaths of many more people yesterday.
Sophie Reaper there, thank you so much for joining us and bringing us the latest on this devastating story for our country. Thank you for joining us. We're now going to be joined by media executive Danny Cohen, who's joining us now to talk about this also. Danny, thanks for coming on the show today.
Good morning.
I hesitate to ask this question, but it almost seemed inevitable this was going to happen with the severe rise of anti-Semitism in the United Kingdom. What do you think the main cause of this attack was? Was it inevitable?
Yeah, it's a very sad day of mourning for Jewish community. And I think it's the day that we've been fearing for quite a long time, particularly since October the 7th. You know, many in the Jewish community have been warning this rising threat of the growth of anti-Semitism in the UK, and not enough has been done to stop it.
Your column in The Telegraph yesterday, you wrote that a number of Jewish people now in the UK, because of their experience in the last 2 years, are questioning whether there is even a future for their families in Britain. No doubt those questions will be even more heightened after yesterday's attack. Do you know British Jews who are actively looking to leave the country?
Yeah, people message me, Jewish friends, and people after my columns message me to say that it is a debate they're having round the table. I would personally urge them not to go, not to consider it. They are proud Britons as well as proud Jews. This is their home, this is their country. And I'm afraid that the history of Jewish people is of having those debates, of having to think, are we safe here in this country? Do we need to go? But this is our country, and I would urge all Jews to stay, to fight, and to be proud to be British Jews.
Danny, the Prime Minister's pledged to do everything he can to protect British Jews, including, obviously, today we've seen an increased police presence. But my question really is this: is the government doing enough? Because we have this cycle where it always seems we're going to do more, we get an increased police presence for a short period of time, and then everything goes back to normal again, doesn't it? Is the government doing enough?
Yeah, there's a reactive response from the government rather than a sufficiently proactive one. I think what Jewish people are saying to me is that words from the Prime Minister are simply not enough. Only action matters now. They're tired of the rhetoric. They're tired of promises. They want to see change. I'd like to see Keir Starmer personally lead the fight against anti-Semitism in this country. He did that in the Labour Party, and I'd like to see him take up the national fight now too. I'd urge him to immediately set up an inquiry into anti-Semitism in the UK that he personally leads and that reports back quickly so that its actions can be implemented quickly. There's no room now for anti-Semitism, for Jew hate in our public services and on the streets of Britain. And we need to see action, concrete steps from the Prime Minister, from this government, to change things.
Now, Danny, the polling on this issue is really interesting, with younger people expressing far more anti-Israel and potentially anti-Jewish views than older people. Why do you think there has been that change, and what can we do to combat the rise of these views in young people?
Yeah, those statistics are notable. I think the first thing to say is that I agree with what Kemi Badenoch said yesterday, that the demonisation of Israel has got entirely out of control. There is an obsessive focus on the acts of Israel compared to any other country in the world. And the government have participated in that rhetoric, most recently with, for me, the horrific decision to recognise a Palestinian state whilst the terrorists were still holding hostages. So I think there's an overall problem with that. With young people, there'll be lots of reasons, but I do think one of the big reasons is that more and more young people, in fact, the majority, get the majority of their news on social media through platforms like TikTok. And these are rabbit holes that send you more about the thing you've recently looked at, and they repeat. And they are, I think, toxifying public debate, particularly amongst young people.
Danny Cohen, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us this morning.
Thank you.
OK. Yeah, devastating stuff. Absolutely devastating stuff today. I think we both came in feeling this is going to be a really heavy show today. And, you know, I'm sure many of you at home feel the same way. It's a very sad day for our country.
When I was an MP, I visited the local synagogue. It wasn't in my constituency, but the most local one, a couple of times after October the 7th. And the stories that they were telling, particularly young people in university, actually, of the kind of abuse that they'd face. I mean, one student even walking into a class and other students giving him the Hitler salute. I mean, absolutely astonishing that young Jews are facing in this country.
We're failing Jewish people in this country severely. All right, still ahead. The Home Secretary urges pro-Palestine protesters to stand down in the wake of yesterday's Manchester synagogue terror attack, saying yesterday's demonstrations were dishonourable.
We don't want our Jewish community here in Britain to have to live a smaller Jewish life because of the fear of anti-Semitism.
But before all that, we're going to go to the weather forecast.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Looking ahead to tomorrow across southern parts of Europe, and there is a lot of fine weather around, but not everywhere. The same band of rain that's been sweeping through today across the UK in association with Storm Amy is going to fringe into northwestern parts of Spain and Portugal, bringing some wet weather here. Elsewhere, generally dry for most, but some heavy, showery bursts of rain likely across more eastern parts, particularly affecting Greece at times. Otherwise, it's looking largely fine into next week.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Oh, yes. It's pretty crass and crude in places, but it is basically making fun of Hitler. And it's to sort of a shady shyster producer who politely shtups old ladies to get investment money. And he figures out, with the help of a young, twitchy accountant, that if they take a lot of money in, put on a show that's guaranteed to flop, they won't have to repay the money, and then they're going to do a runner to Brazil. And of course, they think that Springtime for Hitler is the ideal show, and the guy that plays Franz, who's the writer of it, has like a sort of tin pot hat and these pigeons that harmonise with swastikas on their back. For me, he kind of stole the show. I thought he was wonderful. But they basically put on this show, and of course it becomes a hit. And people think that it's a satire when they were trying to outrage and horrify people and get the show to close.
Because they learned that they could make more money with a flop than they could with a hit.
Yes, because they don't have to repay anybody. So that was the idea behind all of that. It's wonderfully done. This was at the Menier Chocolate Factory before. I didn't love it quite as much there. I just thought it was a little bit cramped. And this is a show that it's broad. It needs big moments, big swings. I liked it. It's on at the Garrick. It's all the way through till January. I just grinned all the way through. It's brilliantly done. Everyone on stage. Andy Nyman in the lead as Max Bialystock is absolutely sensational, filling very big Nathan Lane and Zira Mostel boots. But I think the whole cast is great. I just think everyone is up there absolutely going for it. And you saw it, no?
My mouth was on the floor at some moments. I mean, it is bawdy, it is outrageous.
And the show stands up. It's still relevant. It's still, about possibly what's going on in the world everywhere as well, and fascism and dictatorships, but also about the proper use of satire.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, welcome back, and we have some breaking news for you. In the last few moments, the Met Police have urged pro-Palestine organisers to cancel or delay their protests in the wake of the Manchester synagogue terror attack.
This was echoed by the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood, who said yesterday's demonstrations were un-British.
Well, we'll bring you more on that as we get it. Well, let's now get the thoughts of the legal affairs commentator and former solicitor, Joshua Rosenberg, who's joining us now. Joshua, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. A shocking attack. What was your initial response when you first heard the news?
It's very distressing, and as a lot of people have been saying, it's shocking but not surprising. We've seen a series of attacks on the Jewish community, on synagogues, on individuals, both in the UK and further abroad in Europe and beyond. And I think that this sort of thing was seen as inevitable, despite all the precautions that were being taken. But like all these things, you plan for it. You hope it'll never happen. You're shocked when it is.
Yeah, Joshua, of course, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has come out very strongly and blamed Keir Starmer for being weak on terrorism. Is that a feeling echoed amongst many Jews in this country? Do you feel that the Prime Minister's weak on this issue?
Certainly, not just weak, but wrong. The view of many Jews, I think it's fair to say, and certainly of the Israeli government, is that by recognising a state of Palestine now, while there are still hostages being kept in Gaza who've been kept for the past 2 years in appalling conditions, while Israel is still under attack from terrorists in Gaza, this is not the time to recognise a Palestine state, and this has only given support to Hamas and people who are supporters of Hamas, even though they wouldn't necessarily admit to it. So yes, people do feel betrayed by the present British government.
Now, Joshua, we're having this debate in this country about how it should be possible in a democracy for people to criticise the policies of the Israeli government, for example, but without being anti-Semitic and without wishing any harm on Jews. But that distinction often becomes very, very blurred and is taken advantage of by those who are anti-Semitic. What's the way forward in this? How, in a democracy, do you separate legitimate protest and legitimate opinion from actual hatred and actual violence?
Well, I think the government can give a lead, as many of your contributors have been suggesting. It goes back to education, it goes back to people reading widely, it goes back to people understanding the history. Plenty of Jews don't support the present Israeli government, but I think what people don't understand is that Zionism and Judaism are inextricably linked. Not all Jews want to go and live in Israel, but most Jews, I think it's fair to say, support the idea of Israel. I think it's important that there should be a state of Israel, and recognise that this is something that Jews have been praying for 2,000 years. So whether or not they support the state of Israel, they regard people who are anti-Israeli as anti-Semitic.
Joshua, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I really do beg your pardon, but we have run out of time. We'll have you back on soon. Thank you so much. That's Joshua Rosenberg there.
Well, still ahead, we'll be crossing back to Crumpsall in the wake of that terror attack yesterday. You're watching Britain's Newsroom, Britain's favourite morning show on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm here with your GB News weather update from the Met Office. Yes, Storm Amy is going to arrive through today. It's going to bring damaging winds and heavy persistent rain, especially across northern parts. Further south, the weather's looking less impactful, and actually many places are starting the day with some quiet weather. But quite quickly, the heavy persistent rain across parts of Northern Ireland will feed its way eastwards, so most places are going to turn pretty wet as we go through the afternoon. Also watch out for those strengthening winds, especially across northern parts. Now, temperatures on paper are going to be peaking in the mid to high teens Celsius, but with the rain, with the strong winds pushing in, it's going to feel pretty unpleasant for most of us. Then, as we go into this evening, that's when the winds are really going to start to strengthen, especially across parts of Scotland. There is an amber warning out for winds across northern and western Scotland. Here, damaging gusts could exceed 95 miles per hour, so some significant disruption is quite likely. Also staying windy, in fact increasingly windy across across some parts of central eastern Scotland, northern England, parts of Wales and Northern Ireland as we go overnight, but the rain is pushing through. Further south, and like I said, actually, yes, there will be some blustery wet weather here, but the weather doesn't look especially impactful. That being said, the rain's going to linger for a while across parts of the southeast as we go overnight. Other places will turn a bit drier across some parts of England and Wales with some clear skies, so temperatures could drop into single figures, but all the time as we go overnight it's staying very windy and it's going to be pretty wet as well across much of Scotland. Then as we go through tomorrow, a bit of a wet start in the southeast, but that band of rain clears away, and then really we are still heavily under the influence of Storm Amy. It's going to continue to bring strong winds, especially to the north, but it's looking like a windy day for most of us, and plenty of showers piling in from the northwest, and some of these could be heavy, could even be thundery. Fresher air pushing in and those strong winds making it feel pretty raw.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good morning. This is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. On the M25 anti-clockwise exit slip at junction 30, a road incident with lane closures will likely cause delays. In Kingston upon Hull, congestion on the A63 westbound between the A1079 and A15 causes 20-minute delays, expected to clear by 10:45 to 11 this morning. In Cheshire East, the M6 southbound exit slip at junction 16 faces challenges due to a collision, resulting in one-lane closure. And on the trains, Avanti West Coast is experiencing disruptions due to poor weather, with cross-country services to and from Stansted Airport delayed. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
It's our biggest Great British giveaway to date. You could be driving away with this brand new Benamar Primera motorhome. This 4-berth home from home comes complete with integrated kitchen and bathroom areas and has all of the tech you'd expect from the latest 2025 model. We'll also give you an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to make sure that any adventures you take in your new motorhome are taken in style. For a chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Good morning, it's 10 o'clock on Friday the 3rd of October. We're live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates.
And the Home Secretary urges pro-Palestine protesters to stand down in the wake of yesterday's Manchester synagogue terror attack, saying yesterday's demonstrations were dishonourable.
We don't want our Jewish community here in Britain to have to live a smaller Jewish life because of the fear of anti-Semitism.
And the Conservative Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick also condemned the protests.
I thought the protests last night were deeply disrespectful and should not have gone ahead. But just do the decent thing and go home.
Suspected Islamist attack that saw 2 Jewish people killed and 3 others injured on Yom Kippur, the most holy day of their religious calendar.
And the victims have now been named as 53-year-old Adrian Dolby and 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz.
Police also identified the man they believe carried out the attack as 35-year-old Jihad al-Shemi, a British man of Syrian descent.
Here in Greater Manchester, the police presence will be heightened over the coming days in order to make sure communities here feel safe. That's as their investigation into yesterday's synagogue attack continues.
I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve, starting with a more visible police presence protecting your community.
Well, the Prime Minister has promised to protect the Jewish community, but Israel blames Sir Keir Starmer for the attack, for failing to curb a toxic wave of anti-Semitism. Well, earlier we spoke to the Deputy Foreign Minister for the State of Israel.
Where are the values, the British values? It's absolutely ridiculous. There has to be enforcement. There has to be deterrence. People needs to be persecuted.
Well, elsewhere, the next Archbishop of Canterbury has been unveiled as Sarah Mullally, the first female in the role. Well, a female Archbishop of Canterbury, an interesting choice, especially given how conservative so many Anglicans are in the world, lots in Africa who will be very unhappy about this.
It's just more woke. It's just more wokeness, isn't it? It's just stuff we don't need right now. We need strong leaders. We need strong people of faith. I'm not saying she might not be a strong Archbishop of Canterbury, but I don't know, maybe her track record says differently.
Well, there are already some splits in the Church of England since women were allowed to become priests. I do wonder now there will be some fallout from this. We'll see. Anyway, we'll be keeping you up to date on that. But we'd love to know what you think about that. And, of course, our very serious news today, we're discussing the rise of anti-Semitism in the UK that culminated, of course, in that dreadful attack in Manchester yesterday. So do let us know what you think. gbnews.com/your say.
Well, first up, we're going to get your news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much. Yes, first to that breaking news that Dame Sarah Mullally will be the first female Archbishop of Canterbury in the history of the Church of England, the Cabinet Office has just announced. The Church has been without someone in the top job for almost 1 year after Justin Welby resigned over a safeguarding scandal. More on that breaking story in the next hour. Elsewhere, the 2 men killed in a terror attack on a synagogue in Manchester have been named by police. 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz and 53-year-old Adrian Dolby were killed when a man carried out the attack outside the synagogue in Crumpsall yesterday morning. Adrian Dolby's family have released a statement saying, "We are heartbroken by his passing. We kindly ask for privacy at this time as we grieve and seek the answers we need. Thank you for your understanding and respect." The attacker responsible for the killings of the 2 men and seriously injuring 3 has been named as Jihad al-Shemi. 3 others have been arrested. The 35-year-old British citizen of Syrian descent was shot dead 7 minutes after police were called to the scene. He entered the UK as a very young child and was granted British citizenship in 2006 as a minor. The attack happened as worshippers gathered on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. The UK's chief rabbi says the attack is the tragic result of an unrelenting wave of Jew hatred, while Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer tells the Jewish community he'll do everything in his power to give them the security that they deserve. But yesterday's tragic events didn't stop pro-Palestine protests going ahead across the nation last night. 40 people were arrested, including on suspicion of assaulting police, the Home Secretary has said this morning. The Met Police are calling for such protests to be cancelled. Shabana Mahmood says the pro-Palestine marches that took place in the wake of the terror attack were dishonourable and fundamentally un-British.
Don't want our Jewish community here in Britain to have to live a smaller Jewish life because of the fear of anti-Semitism. And it is really important that we all hold the line between that which is legitimate in our country, which is protest and so on, but that behaviour which crosses the line and breaks our laws. The laws of our land must be upheld, and I will ensure that they are.
Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick says anti-Semitism is a cancer in our society and must be stamped out.
This was the most gut-wrenching attack, and such sadness for the community in North Manchester and for, above all, the victims and their families. The Jewish community is shocked today, but I don't think it's surprised, because anti-Semitism and extremism has been allowed to grow and grow among us for far, far too long. And now we need to see action by government and by everyone, frankly, in society to root it out.
In other news, TikTok's algorithm recommends pornography and highly sexualised content to children's accounts, according to a new report by a human rights campaign group. Researchers created fake child accounts and activated safety settings, but still received sexually explicit search suggestions. The suggested search terms led to sexualised material, including explicit videos. The platform says it's committed to safe and age-appropriate experiences and took immediate action once it knew of the problem. Elsewhere, Storm Amy has been upgraded from a yellow to an amber warning for large parts of North and West Scotland. The Met Office has warned of widespread winds reaching 60 to 70 miles per hour, with more exposed areas seeing gusts in excess of 95. The warning is in place from 5 p.m. today to 9 a.m. tomorrow. A yellow warning for winds of up to 60 miles per hour in those exposed areas has been issued for all of Scotland, Northern Ireland and large parts of North and West England and Wales from 3 p.m. until midnight. And Prince William has said change is on my agenda when he becomes king, in his most open and personal explanation to date about he sees his future role and the future of the monarchy. The revelations come during a discussion with Hollywood actor Eugene Levy as they were filming at Windsor Castle for Levy's travel series The Reluctant Traveller. When asked if the monarchy will be shifting in a slightly different direction when he becomes king, William says, "I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good, and I embrace that and I enjoy that change." The Prince of Wales also opens up about being overwhelmed by family problems last year as both Kate and the King were diagnosed with cancer, and his desire to try to make sure you don't do the same mistakes as your parents.
History doesn't overwhelm you. Is there anything that does?
Yeah, I think stuff to do with family overwhelms me quite a bit. You know, worry or stress around family side of things, that does overwhelm me quite a bit. But in terms of, you know, doing the job and things like that, I don't feel too overwhelmed by that. Not now, anyway. When I was younger, yeah, there are bits that overwhelm you, a bit like, whoa, are we actually doing this? Is this sort of happening? But with time and age, I think you feel a bit more settled in that side of things.
And those are the latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom. Of course, we're live across the United Kingdom and on GB News here. With me, Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates.
Well, the new Archbishop of Canterbury has been announced. Of course, Justin Welby stepped down some time ago now following the safeguarding scandals that our viewers will remember. But the new Archbishop is a woman, Sarah Mullally, and she becomes the 106th Archbishop, but the first female in that role in 1,400 years.
Oh, this comes almost a year after Justin Welby resigned over a safeguarding, of course, as Miriam was saying, their scandal there. Really interesting to see her political opinions. We've been digging into it, so we'll bring you some of that in a second. But first, we're joined by GB News political correspondent Catherine Forster. Catherine, of course, a historic moment to have a woman as Archbishop of Canterbury there. What can you tell us?
Yes, well, good morning from Downing Street, where the Prime Minister's office has just announced this appointment. The role of Archbishop of Canterbury has existed for 1,400 years, but history has been made today because the new Archbishop of Canterbury is to be a woman. We knew that that was likely, but it's just been confirmed, and she is Dame Sarah Mulhalley. She is currently the Bishop of London. She's a former nurse. In fact, she was had a very senior role in nursing and Bishop of London for the last few years. And the Archbishop of Canterbury, a critical role within the Church of England, representing the southern two-thirds of England, of course, the Bishop of York representing the north, but a massive figure in the Church of England below only the King. And the reason I'm in Downing Street, because the process for this appointment, it's all pretty secretive. It's been led by a former MI5 spy, but basically they have a whole long list of candidates, and it is whittled down and whittled down and whittled down until they get two with a two-thirds majority in favour of them. And at that point, those final two are handed over to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister makes that decision, and then it will go to the King for approval. So a big, big day for the Church of England. And of course, it's nearly a year since the former Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, was forced to stand down basically over not having done enough to prevent the child abuse that we now know went on in the Sea of E, to have been incurious at the very least and look the other way.
Catherine, some will see this as a deliberately provocative move for Conservatives in the Church, particularly in Africa, who of course have been quite distressed by the Liberal move in the Church of England in the UK. Surely Downing Street understand that this could possibly cause a permanent split in the Church.
Well, yes, indeed it could. And the last time that an Archbishop of Canterbury was appointed, women couldn't even be bishops. And in many parts of the world that are less, more conservative, this may provoke some unhappiness. So, yes, there is an awareness of this. But we've had a statement from, she's now called the Archbishop of Canterbury designate, and she's acknowledged the huge responsibility of her new role, but said that she feels a sense of peace and trust in God to carry me. So she's gone on to say, as I respond to the call of Christ to this new ministry, I do so in the same spirit of service to God and to others that has motivated me since I first came to faith as a teenager. And then she said, at every stage of that journey, through my nursing career and Christian ministry, I've learnt to listen deeply to people and to God's gentle prompting to seek to bring people together to find hope and healing. I want very simply to encourage the Church to continue to grow in confidence in the gospel, to speak of the love that we find in Jesus Christ, and for it to shape our actions.
Well, Catherine, I just want to ask you, because we've been looking through her Twitter account here. It's rather revealing, if you ask my opinion, Catherine. Of course, you don't have to be overtly political about this, but she has said in the past, on June the 2nd, 2020, she went, now is a time to listen and to learn. We stand together for dignity, equality and justice. # Black Lives Matter. She has certainly not been unafraid to air those political views before. And now we look back on that campaign with a little bit more, at least, trepidation than we did at the time. This would almost, to some, if you were to evaluate her political stance on things, seem like a political appointment by the government. How do you think the response will be from the wider Christian public on this particular appointment?
Well, I'm sure that the government would absolutely push back on any suggestion that it is a political response. But look, there's going to be a lot of scrutiny now of her, isn't there? Everything that she said on X, of course. On the way over here as well, it seems that there are some victims of sexual abuse within the Church of England that are not happy with this appointment. We will get the details of that, no doubt, in the coming hours and days. But yes, of course it is controversial. It's a real break from history, but it is 2025, and clearly the view has been that the time has come to have a woman in the top job in the Church of England.
Catherine Forster, thank you very much for that report there. Astonishing, Alex. Actually, I think people were hoping for perhaps a more orthodox figure or a compromise figure. But, you know, of course, the people who have put her name forward will say that, you know, they've thought about this prayerfully, they've considered lots of different candidates. But to Conservatives, particularly in the African communion, who are already distressed about some of the direction of what they would see as the liberal Church of England here in the UK, this will seem like deliberate provocation, almost daring them to split from the church.
It's completely bonkers to me. I mean, I'm looking at some of the tweets as she celebrated. She said, "I'm grieving the death of George Floyd and other men and women of colour whose lives have been unjustly lost." Now, if you actually looked at George Floyd's case, you might think differently, and I think it's preposterous for now the Archbishop of Canterbury to really have got behind a campaign that really, in hindsight, is very, very poorly and ill-judged. I can't understand at a time when so many young people are desperate to get back into Christianity that we don't have somebody, and the government haven't considered, and others haven't considered, the importance of this appointment.
Well, we will see what happens in the days and weeks ahead. And we're now joined by the pastor and the director of Affinity Network, Graham Nichols. Graham, good morning. Lovely to have you join us. This news, of course, has only just been announced. But what's your initial reaction to the appointment of Sarah Mullally as our new Archbishop of Canterbury?
Yeah, thank you for having me on. I'm obviously prayerful for the future of the Church of England, although there's all sorts of problems with it. It is significant in terms of its reach across the whole country, particularly England, but also into the other nations. So I'm prayerful that there's something good comes out of that. I'm cautious and worried that the appointment is more of a political appointment, and it is from somebody who's been chosen who, from all that I've read, would not be considered someone who really believes the whole teaching of the Bible on a number of issues to do with the gospel and to do with sexuality and just the whole kind of acceptance of things. And the irony is, as I think your colleague was just saying, that actually people are looking for truth and clarity, and there's nothing to be ashamed of with the teaching of the Bible. And my prayer would be that the Church of England and the leadership of the Church of England gets back to what the Bible actually teaches and give people hope.
Yeah, Graham, it seems to me that the Church of England has become ever more engaged in modern politics than focusing on religion. Of course, this is not the first criticism we've had, particularly I've had, at least, should I say, of archbishops of Canterbury in this country. And I think many people just want religious figures to stick to the teachings of the Bible rather than stick their nose into politics. I was reading out a tweet there by Sarah Mullally a few years ago on Black Lives Matter, which, you know, is a highly divisive political campaign in hindsight, highly divisive. And now people look back on that campaign with perhaps not the same view they had at the time. Is it slightly worrying to you that we have somebody who's willing to jump into political campaigns like that?
Yeah, and I think the whole process of appointment wasn't really theological. It wasn't, let's find someone who really understands the teaching of the Church of England and is going to be really good at promoting it and encouraging all the other bishops and all the vicars and sort of lay leaders and everything to do that. It's really a political appointment made by a political process, which didn't seem to include that many people who were kind of recognised Christian leaders. So I think that's what you end up with, someone who's more of a political figure. I think you're absolutely right. You know, me as a network leader of a network of churches, I have my own personal political convictions and ideas, but I think we just need to stick to principles. It's not wrong to engage a bit, you might say, with politics, but once it gets into the details of policy about how you implement, it's just divisive for church leaders to get involved in that and distracts from what their central purpose is. So I hope she doesn't, but obviously from what you've been reading, the track record is that she has.
Well, Graham Nichols, thank you very much for your comments, and we will be returning to this story later on.
Well, the Met Police have urged pro-Palestine organisers to cancel or delay protests in the wake of the Manchester synagogue terror attack.
Well, this was echoed by the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, who demanded an end to those pro-Palestine demonstrations, calling them un-British.
The victims killed in the synagogue attack in Crumpsall yesterday have been named as 53-year-old Adrian Dalby and 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz.
Well, let's cross live to Crumpsall, where GBNews North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper is there for us. Sophie, bring us up to date with the latest developments this morning.
say I'll do everything in their power to ensure this.
Well, the latest development we've heard this morning is the names of the two men who were killed in the incident yesterday. You just named them, but I think we should hear them again. Adrian Dolby, aged 53, and Melvin Kravitz, aged 66. Members of this local community, members of the Jewish faith, they sadly lost their lives yesterday when Jihad al-Shami carried out that terrorist attack at Heaton Park Synagogue, just 100 yards here behind me. And this is something that is having a ripple effect, not just here in the Crumpsall area, not just here in Greater Manchester, but around the UK. We know that there has been increased security at synagogues around the UK. We know that GMP has increased the number of officers all around Greater Manchester, and that will remain in place over the coming days in order to make sure that those of the Jewish faith and other communities feel safe over the coming weekend and the coming weeks. Earlier we had the opportunity to speak to Dame Louise Ellman, who's a former MP that was born and raised in this area. She attended Heaton Park Synagogue. She was married there. She's also one of the vice presidents of the Jewish Leadership Council, and she spoke to us about the impact this will have on those of the Jewish faith.
I think the government have done their best, but more needs to be done. And it's not just the government, more needs to be done by the various authorities, and policing is important. I think it's incredible, horrendous, that when we are mourning the murder of Jewish people who attended synagogue, who went to pray on the Jewish Day of Atonement, the holiest day of the year, and were cut down so cruelly, there are people on the streets with their hate speech. Yet again, it's intolerable.
And I think what Dame Louise touched on there is one of the reasons why the security at synagogues and in Greater Manchester in particular has been increased over the coming days. Of course, we know those pro-Palestine marches took place yesterday evening. That the Met Police has urged any planned for tonight or for this weekend to be cancelled in order to pay respect for those who lost their lives and their loved ones, but also those of the Jewish faith who yesterday, Yom Kippur, the most important holy day in the Jewish calendar, instead of it being that important day, instead it was blighted by a terrorist attack. So the Met Police urging people not to carry out pro-Palestine marches today, instead to cancel those and to show the respect that those who lost their lives and those of the Jewish faith, to show them the respects that they deserve.
Now, Sophie, I saw some commentary yesterday about how, in the past, the different communities within the North Manchester area were able to live peacefully side by side, Jewish community, Muslim community, people of Christian faith and no faith. And yet that has come under tension, that unity has come under tension. It's going to be very difficult going ahead to restore any kind of good relationship between the communities, isn't it?
Well, what's really interesting, Miriam, I actually spoke to a local resident earlier on today, a man named Mike O'Shea that we actually heard from earlier on in the programme. I'm not sure if we've got that clip, but just to elaborate a little bit on what he said, he was born and raised here in Crumpsall. He lived just down the road at the time. And he spoke to me about North Manchester and that it's always been a tight-knit community. And what he actually said was they're not going to let what happened yesterday come between the various communities, the various faiths that live in this particular area. He said, and I quote him, "We're not having it." And that's a very northern, a very Mancunian way to put it. But that is the message that he had. He, and I'm sure many people would agree, they don't want to let the actions of one cause terror and division. And instead what they're going to do is come together. We've seen people today coming from everywhere, laying flowers. In fact, I believe we can hear from Mike O'Shea now. Just listen to this clip and just take a listen to what he had to say about the division here.
And this community is a solid community. This won't affect that. But people like me, you know, I felt compelled to come here today to make a statement and to make a stand against this sort of thing. And it's not going to drive a wedge between the different elements of this community. It's not going to do it. We're not having it.
Well, thank you, Sophie, for that report. Well, still ahead, the Home Secretary has urged pro-Palestine protesters to stand down in the wake of yesterday's synagogue terror attack in Manchester, saying that those demonstrations were dishonourable.
We don't want our Jewish community here in Britain to have to live a smaller Jewish life because of the fear of anti-Semitism.
Yeah, you're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News. We'll see you shortly.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Talk to our favourite space expert, Andy Lound. Good morning, Andy. Because, some people will say, well, why does it matter? But it changes our perspective, doesn't it, of cosmic evolution?
Yes, good morning, Beth. Yes, it does. It's quite an important discovery. And again, it just shows that science constantly moves on. The instrument they've used, Gravity Plus, has taken the light from 4 major telescopes and actually analysed that of a black hole. And at the centre of the black hole, you have the quasar, which is the active nuclei of a black hole. And surrounding that is a ring of dust and gas, the accretion disk. And it's thought that the black holes were obviously feeding on this, the materials falling into the black hole. Now, that was measured at 800 times the mass of our star, the sun. However, when they were looking at it very carefully with the new instruments, better resolution, they found that what's quite exciting is the fact that the radiation which surrounds the black hole and part of this accretion disk is actually blasting a lot of this dust and gas out, away from the region. So the electromagnetic radiation and the various interactions is blasting much of this material away, which means, of course, it's not eating up all that material, so the black hole therefore could be up to 10 times smaller than they actually thought. This is a really important discovery because we're trying to understand why there were such massive black holes in the early universe, and our physics wasn't really fitting in with that. But now, with this new instrument and the new measurements we're doing, we're getting a better handle. It does mean, of course, that a lot of the objects we've seen in the early universe now, and looking at those early quasars, we're having to do recalculations and redo a resetting. But it will help the physics of understanding how the early universe formed.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back, everybody. Well, bonkers news day today. It really does feel like the country has just completely lost its mind. Of course, you're watching Britain's Newsroom on GB News with me, Alex Armstrong and Miriam Cates. We've got our guests, wonderful guests here, Dr. Renee and Andy Williams, to talk through the newspapers.
Good morning.
Good morning. Should we start, of course, with the big news story of the day, which is the continuation of the fallout of the act of terrorism against the Jewish community yesterday in Manchester, Andy. Israel here in the Telegraph blaming Starmer. They're blaming Keir Starmer for this attack.
Yeah, I mean, there's the obvious first thing to say is it's just an utterly horrific thing to have happened. You know, I was in a meeting at work yesterday. I saw out of the corner of my eye that this was happening on Yom Kippur. My wife is Jewish, and it's just it's scary. It's to be a member of the Jewish community or anybody who knows anyone in the Jewish community, which is many people, is just it's so alarming to see this happen. In terms of Israel's, blaming Keir Starmer. You can blame Keir Starmer for many things, but I just don't think this is one. And you can politicise many things, and I've seen all sorts of people, including you, Alex, on X yesterday, going in, politicising this. But I just think we have to look at this in two ways. Firstly, anti-Semitism has always been an enormous problem, and it's been whipped up again in recent years for obvious reasons. And I think we just have to call it out, and we have to do everything we can to resist it. And the second thing is that, unfortunately, there will always be mad people in the world who are easily radicalised, who do stupid things. And I don't think we should be demonising any particular religion as a result of what happened.
I'm not sure about that.
Really, I'm not. Oh,
sorry.
Go for it. I'm not sure about that either, because can you please give me a list of any Christian or Jew that has walked into a school or a children's concert in this country and blown themselves up or stabbed people or killed people purely in the name of their religion?
Yes.
There isn't one. Please do.
The IRA mounted a campaign of terror for decades and decades. I know that was about a territory, but there was also a huge religious dimension to that. You have to accept that.
But it wasn't anti-Semitic. That's the point we're making.
No, but that wasn't the point Renee was making.
There are other forms of terrorism, but we are talking about anti-Semitic terrorism.
I totally agree with that. But that is Renee's point was, can you name anybody who's gone and done that in the name of religion? And yes, absolutely you can.
Of the last 20 terror attacks, only 5 of them have been so-called far-right terror attacks. The rest have been Islamist terror attacks. And I think we've got to get real, and we've got to start talking about the radicalisation of Muslim men in this country. And I think
that is a really important point, because we have to talk about radical... Let's separate the faith of Islam from the massive and genuine problem of radicalisation.
You can't.
That is the issue. Yes, you can.
No, you can't.
Yes, you
can.
This
is the
We've
problem.
just got live footage I think we're going to bring you of Keir Starmer in Crumpsall. I believe we'll bring that to you in just a second, and we'll continue talking about this important topic as well while we're at it.
I'm afraid this apologising for, Islam is a gentle religion and all of this is what's allowing this to happen. There are 50,000 people since Keir Starmer has come to power who have stepped off a boat in Dover who may well feel exactly the same as this young man with a British passport. We need to put them all into detention centres and decide what we're going to do about it. I'm sorry, we are allowing anti-Semitism and terrorism to step into our country every day.
I just want to go back on the point, you're saying I was politicising this. It's a political act. This is an act of political terrorism, and it's a racist one, it's a political one. And what really frustrates me is just a few weeks ago, there was a few 100,000 people protesting in London, waving the Union Jack. The Prime Minister and all of the front bench and the Mayor of London got up on their podiums, they got their public notices out going, the far right this, the far right that. 100,000 people and 25 people arrested. Last night, we saw the most disgraceful, dishonourable act of far left thuggery, where people on a day of attack on our Jewish community, on attack on assimilation, on attack on integration, where is the condemnation of it? Where
there
is
should
the Prime
be, because
Minister? Where is the Prime Minister? Where is the Mayor of London? This bigotry is what pisses... Excuse my language, I apologise, excuse me. I'm very animated, but apologies to the audience. This is what really riles people up in this country. It's bigotry. I think we want our politicians...
The protest... Let me say two things. The first is that protest yesterday should never have gone ahead.
Right.
Totally and utterly insensitive, right? If we're going to have free speech in this country, we have to allow people, unfortunately, to go and say and do distasteful things on our streets. And I think that was distasteful. Of course, it should be allowed to go ahead. I think it's completely unacceptable that anyone would think just so deeply ill-timed and insensitive. I think in terms of the political aspect, and Renee mentioned small boats, and you did yesterday, Alex. I mean, I want to understand, when you're going onto Twitter and saying women, children, men, no more exceptions, not our problem, deport.
Yes.
Do you mean everybody who's ever come into Britain who's not British?
I do, yeah. I mean, if people have come over here, we cannot guarantee the safety. One terrorist...
So you think we should deport...
One too many.
So you think, as a result of what happened yesterday, we should deport everybody who wasn't born here?
Let me ask you the question.
No.
Do you think it's...
Well, that's what Alex's tweet implies.
Do you think it's acceptable for another British person to die because we cannot control the radicalisation of people in this country?
I don't think it's acceptable for anybody to die in that manner. What I want to understand is to be clear on, is your solution deporting everybody who wasn't born in Britain?
I think we need mass deportations of people...
Of everyone who wasn't born in Britain?
This man's name is Jihad, for goodness sake.
Well,
his name is...
I just want to understand what you mean.
We need to be really specific about what we're talking about.
We do. That's why I want to understand what Alex was saying.
Islamism is a problem. Not every British Muslim believes that attacks on Jews are justified. Yeah. But there are many interpretations of Islam and the Quran that do justify that. And so we need to have an open conversation about what is Islam, what does it teach, who believes what's being preached in mosques.
What's being taught in our mosques.
Exactly. I think that's a very important...
But what about somebody who came over here who's a Muslim at the age of 19 and has assimilated
Yeah,
and is a good person and does...
He's a Muslim and integrated into this country.
So you wouldn't deport him? You wouldn't deport him?
He came over to this country legally. He was invited to this country legally, and he's worked his backside off, and he's assimilated into this country. It's a very important distinction. This man clearly has never assimilated.
Do you know what?
Not once. Even the Home Secretary saying we need people to assimilate better into
I totally agree with that, and I'm not defending it.
That's what I'm
We're
saying.
going to have to bring it to a close. We will continue in that. Sorry, Renee. But because we do need to move on to the news, so here's your 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Miriam, thank you very much. The top stories. The 2 men killed in a terror attack on a synagogue in Manchester have been named by police. 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz and 53-year-old Adrian Dolby were killed when a man carried out a stabbing outside the synagogue in Crumpsall yesterday morning. Elsewhere, Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the appointment of Dame Sarah Mullally as the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. It comes almost a year since Justin Welby resigned from the role as spiritual leader of the Church of England due to a damning review into his handling of a sexual abuse scandal. TikTok's algorithm recommends pornography and highly sexualised content to children's accounts. That's according to a new report by Human Rights Campaign Group. Storm Amy has been upgraded from a yellow to an amber warning for large parts of north and west Scotland. The Met Office has warned of widespread winds reaching 70 miles per hour, with more exposed areas seeing gusts in excess of 95. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me at the top of the hour.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Thank you, Tatiana. Well, we can now cross live to the brand new Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mullally, who is addressing the nation.
In December, it has not been easy to accept that I will be leaving you. Washing feet has shaped my Christian vocation as a nurse, then a priest, then a bishop. In the apparent chaos which surrounds us, in the midst of such profound global uncertainty, the possibility of healing lies in acts of kindness and love. With humility and grace, we uphold and support those in need of our help. We do this to the best of our ability, in small ways and bigs, according to our own very particular gifts. That too is the service which I offer the Church today. Given the many struggles of our Church and of societies here and around the world, I am often asked where I see hope. I have the privilege to see hope in communities, chaplaincies and churches in the Church of England and across the wider Anglican communion. In parishes across this nation, I see faithful clergy and congregations worshipping God and loving their neighbours. I see thousands of churches running food banks and homeless shelters. I see hospitals and prison chaplains caring for people and families in the times of desperation. I see Church of England schools educating 1 million children across this country. I hear parishioners ringing bells and inviting people to pray. I hear the quiet hum of faith in every community, the gentle invitation to come and be with others, and the welcome extended to every person. In all of this, I see hope, because I see the person of Jesus Christ reaching out to us all. Last summer, I found myself in 3 Anglican churches in 3 different countries in rapid succession, in Brazil, Canada and Barbados. In each one, I was able to follow the liturgy without hesitation. Morning prayer, the Eucharist, collective prayers for the people, the rhythms of Anglican worship echoed with familiar grace. I saw something deeply distinctive, coupled with mutual understanding, a shared inheritance of history, of family, of worship, sacrament and word, made real in global diversity. Anglican churches and networks around the world working together in mission, joining their voices in advocacy for those in need. In an age that craves certainty and tribalism, Anglicanism offers something quieter but stronger. Shared history held in tension, shaped by prayer and lit from within by the glory of Christ. That is what gives me hope. In our fractured and hurting world, that partnership in the gospel could not be more vital. Hope is made of the infinite love of God, who breathed life into creation and said it was good. Hope shimmered in the courage of Abraham and Sarah and the challenging call of the prophets. Hope resounded through Mary's yes to God's call to bear his son. Hope is found in Christ's triumph over sin and death. Hope doesn't skip over grief, pain and the messiness of life, but enters into it and tenderly tells us that God is with us. Across our nation today, we are wrestling with complex moral and political questions. The legal right of terminally ill people to end their own life. Our response to people fleeing war and persecution to seek safety and refuge. The pressures on communities who have been overlooked and undervalued. The deep-rooted question of who we are as a nation in a world that is so often on the brink. Mindful of the horrific violence of yesterday's attack on a synagogue in Manchester, we are witnessing hatred that rises up through fractures across our communities. I know that the God who is with us draws near to those who suffer. We then, as a church, have a responsibility to be a people who stand with the Jewish community against anti-Semitism in all its forms. Hatred and racism of any kind cannot be allowed to tear us apart. In every church, you will encounter Jesus Christ and his teaching to love one another, our source and our standard. This is both gift and responsibility. Jesus Christ is the life-changing hope that brings us together as church, even in our own brokenness and messiness, and sends us out into the world to witness to that love. I long for that same hope for all those around the world caught up in war, for those living in extreme poverty, for those on the front line of the ever-worsening climate crisis, for our Palestinian Christian brothers and sisters, for all peoples of the Middle East, the people of Ukraine, Russia, Sudan, Myanmar, and the DRC. May God end the horrors of war, comfort those who mourn, and bring hope to those living in despair. And I pray especially for Anglicans in those places as they suffer alongside the people they seek to love and to care for. The Christian faith is unwavering in its teaching that we are all made in the image of God. Each one of us deserves to be treated with dignity, compassion, and respect. Christ commands us to love God and to love our neighbours as ourselves. In living in the service of others, we must also confront the dynamics of power, an issue brought into sharp focus by the recent safeguarding reviews and reports. As a church, we have too often failed to recognise or take seriously the misuse of power in all its forms. As Archbishop, my commitment will be to ensure that we continue to listen to survivors, care for the vulnerable, and foster a culture of safety and well-being for all. This will not be easy. Our history of safeguarding failures have left a legacy of deep harm and mistrust. And we must all be willing to have light shone on our actions, regardless of our role in the Church. Since my ordination, I have witnessed a significant professional and cultural shift in safeguarding. I know the National Safeguarding Team continues to work tirelessly alongside diocesan professionals and countless parish volunteers to ensure that we are a church that not only prevents abuse, but responds well to when it is reported. Safeguarding is everyone's business, but for those of us in senior leadership, it carries an added weight of accountability. The role of the Archbishop of Canterbury, is complex and challenging, but there is also something very simple about it. Along with my brother and sister bishops, I am called to share the hope that we have found in Jesus Christ and what it means for us all as individuals and as a society. The role that I will take on next year is one that only can be done together. I look forward to sharing my ministry with the Archbishop of York, with Bishop Rose, the wider College of Bishops, and with primates and bishops across the Anglican Communion. I will share it too with clergy, congregations, schools, and people of Canterbury Diocese. And I'm especially grateful to the students of Archbishop's School for being here this morning. Thank you for being here today as we begin this new chapter together. Our ministry as Christians is always shared. The proverb tells us, if we want to go fast, go alone. But if we want to go far, go together. I'm told that there will be much talk today about this being a historic moment and a joyous one for many. I share with you in that joy, not for myself, but for a church that listens to the calling of God and says, yes, we will follow you. Some will be asking what it means for a woman to lead the Church of England and to take on the Archbishop of Canterbury's global role in the Anglican Communion. I intend to be a shepherd who enables everyone's ministry and vocation to flourish, whatever the tradition. Today I give thanks for all the men and women, lay and ordained, deacons, priests and bishops who have paved the way for this moment. And to all the women that have gone before me, thank you for your support and inspiration. I was recently asked, if I was called to this role, what would my legacy be? I said that I would want to nurture and cultivate confidence in the gospel, both within individuals and across churches, in the Church of England and the wider Anglican Communion. I humbly offer myself, my gifts and the experience that God has given me in service to God's world and God's church. I will not always get things right, but I'm encouraged by the psalmist who tells us that, though you stumble, you shall not fall headlong, for the Lord holds you fast by your hand. I trust in the truth of those words for me, for you, for the Church of England, for the nation, for the Anglican Communion and for the world. Held fast by the Lord's hand, please pray for me as I pray for you. That was just a pause. The Archbishop of York is my model. I'd now like to invite Noah to close in prayer.
Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for sending us a shepherd to guide your people. We pray
We've just been watching an address by the new Archbishop of Canterbury, Dame Sarah Mullally, addressing the nation there, talking about her vision for her term in office. I think she's 63, which means she'll only be allowed to serve 7 years. There's a forced retirement age of 70 if you're Archbishop of Canterbury.
Small blessings. I mean, Dr. Mullally, what do you make of the pro-abortion, feminist, woke, BLM-loving new Archbishop of Canterbury?
It's just not what we need right now, is it? We're all so tired of all of this stuff that is interfering with our culture, which is destroying the family, which is dividing everybody. What we need right now is unity, and this is not the way to do it. We need somebody who's strong, who's going to come out and say, you know what, power is in the family, we need more children, we need to stop all this division. But she's not going to do it. I look down her timeline and all of the deacons she's ever celebrated are all women. You know, it's just so biased towards that kind of thing. And now we hear that she's pro-abortion, she's BLM supporting, climate change. It couldn't be worse.
Another Labour appointment.
Yeah. I mean, let's not be ridiculous. Look, I just don't think this. I'm lost for words because I just don't care. I just don't care. Look, of course, let's try and be serious for a minute. My grandfather was a Church of England vicar. I get that the Archbishop of Canterbury is an important figurehead, but 14% of people in Britain identify as Anglican or Church of England. This person does not represent anything close to the majority of people in this country, and probably not the majority of people in that church. So it's a big shrug emoji from me.
And yet, you're completely right in saying that, but it is in this country a very important constitutional role. The Church of England is part of our state, is part of our parliament, and so she will have an influential role, even if not over your life, obviously, but clearly in the life of this nation.
Well, no, but I don't think this is the thing, Miriam. I think it's, as I say, it's a figurehead role, of course, and, you know, our bishops are in our legislature and all of those sorts of things, but fundamentally, will who the Archbishop of Canterbury is make a difference to the life of our nation in 2025? No.
Well, I think it could, if it was somebody who was willing to speak truth.
I don't agree. I really don't agree. The only thing I've agreed...
Do you really seriously think that this appointment will have any impact on anything whatsoever?
Yes, of course.
Outside of the church?
Yes, of course, because these people speak up in the House of Lords. They get reported on the front pages of our newspapers when they do. We saw it with the last one all of the time, bemoaning, you know, immigration and the way we treated people. It was on our front pages. Of course it's an important role. And people read their newspapers and they take note of headlines. In fact, people tend to only... Well, they kind of do. They take note of headlines. They don't read the detail.
Have you seen the figures for readership of papers lately?
But they don't read the content. They just read the headlines. Headlines influence people's feelings.
And of course, this is part of history as well. I mean, this will be remembered in history, be written in books about our time, and the political influences of the church of our time will certainly go down. So it does have a profound impact on the country in some way or another, even if it's not now, maybe in the future as well.
Don't forget, Andy, more young people are turning to the church right now than we've ever seen in the last 2 decades.
Well, I think they might be just turning back around. Anyway, up next, we'll be crossing back live to Crumpsall as Keir Starmer visits the site of the Manchester synagogue terror attack. Of course, this is Britain's Newsroom. You're with me, Alex Armstrong and Miriam Gates.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Amy is on the way. Wind warnings have been issued across many parts of the UK, but with amber warnings for western Scotland and western parts of Northern Ireland, with Storm Amy expected to deepen very rapidly during the coming hours as it approaches the UK from the Atlantic. Initially, we've got the rain moving in. That's going to cause some issues across Northern Ireland, northwest England and western Scotland in particular, because we've had so much wet weather so far this week. That rain turning things very soggy indeed in the west, spells of rain further east as well. Then the wind whips up. Once the main band of rain moves through, that's when the strongest winds arrive to the south of the low pressure centre as Amy pushes into the northwest of Scotland, and it's across western Scotland and Northern Ireland where we are most concerned about the risk of damaging, disruptive and dangerous winds, peaking late afternoon into the evening widely across northern parts of the UK, 50, 60, perhaps 70 miles an hour in some of the more exposed spots. But for western parts of Northern Ireland, risk of 80 mile per hour wind gusts, and western parts of Scotland, particularly the Western Isles, the risk of 100 mile per hour wind gusts. So really serious wind speeds as Storm Amy moves through. Those winds peaking during the evening on Friday, but continuing very strong overnight across the north and west of Scotland in particular, Northern Ireland, northwest England, as well as north and west Wales. And it's going to be a blustery night across the whole of the UK as a band of heavy rain sweeps through. So lively conditions for many. Those warnings still in force as we begin Saturday. The wind only slowly moderating through the day. In fact, it's actually increasing across the far north of Scotland, including Shetland and Orkney, with some heavy rain and showers moving through here. A blustery day for many of us, the wind turning colder as well. It's going to feel fairly miserable out there as the showers rush in from the west, but there will be some brightness in between the downpours.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
You could bank an incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. And if that wasn't enough, you'll also get to drive away in this brand new motorhome. This brand new 2025 Benamar Primero could be yours. It comes with all the mod cons you'd expect from a vehicle worth over £74,000 and comfortably sleeps 4 people. This prize package is worth over £104,000. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB16 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 31st of October. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience, because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Kerr weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11 a.m. on Friday the 3rd of October, live across the United Kingdom. This is Britain's Newsroom with me, Alex Armstrong, and Miriam Cates.
Well, first we're going to start with some breaking news from our reporter Sophie Reaper in Crumpsall in Manchester.
Well, in the last few minutes, we've heard from Greater Manchester Police that sadly one of the deceased victims suffered gunshot wounds that they believe may have come from Greater Manchester Police armed officers discharging a weapon in what they say was in order to bring the vicious attack to an end. We'll have more on that in the coming hour.
And the Home Secretary urges pro-Palestine protesters to stand down in the wake of yesterday's Manchester synagogue terror attack, saying yesterday's demonstrations were dishonourable.
We don't want our Jewish community here in Britain to have to live a smaller Jewish life because of the fear of anti-Semitism.
And the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick also condemned the protests.
I thought the protests last night were deeply disrespectful and should not have gone ahead. But just do the decent thing and go home.
This was the suspected Islamist attack that saw 2 Jewish people killed and 3 others injured on Yom Kippur, the most holy day of the Jewish calendar.
And the victims have now been named as 53-year-old Adrian Dalby and 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz.
Police also identify the man they believe carried out the attack as 35-year-old Jihad al-Shemi, a British man of Syrian descent.
Elsewhere, the next Archbishop of Canterbury has been unveiled as Sarah Mullally, the first female in the role. We're asking, has the Church of England gone woke? Alex, we've just had a very heated discussion with our panel about whether it matters that the Church of England, the new head of the Church of England, is a woman, and whether it matters at all to people in Britain. But it's part of our constitution, whether we like it or not. She will have an important role in our parliament.
Yeah, and I think more than it's whether she's a woman, it's important about what her beliefs are, whether she's somebody, young Christians who we're seeing a massive influx of in the last couple of years, are going to get behind her. And I don't know whether they can get behind someone who seems to hold the views that she does on all these political issues.
And we've just heard her address the nation, and it was a lovely speech about how she wants to demonstrate love and all very Christian virtues. But I think what people are crying out for at the moment is actually truth, to separate some of the beliefs that we've been hearing over the last few years. What actually is the truth? Where does our culture come from? What kind of things do Christians believe? And that was not particularly evident in her talk, but early days.
Well, let us know what you think if you could stay awake during her speech. gbnews.com/you'll But first, here's your news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Alex, thank you. Yes, that breaking news first, that Greater Manchester Police says sadly one of the Manchester synagogue terror attack victims suffered a gunshot wound that may have come from one of their police officers as they desperately tried to bring the attack to an end as soon as they possibly could. More detail on that as we get it. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has visited the synagogue where the 2 men were killed. They were killed in the attack and have been named this morning. 66-year-old Melvin Kravitz, 53-year-old Adrian Dalby were killed when that man carried out the attack outside the synagogue in Crumpsall yesterday morning. Adrian's family released a statement earlier today saying, "We're heartbroken by his passing. We kindly ask for privacy at this time as we grieve and seek the answers we need. Thank you for your understanding and respect." The attacker responsible for the killings of the 2 men and seriously injuring 3 has been named as Jihad al-Shami. 3 others have been arrested. The 35-year-old British citizen of Syrian descent was shot dead 7 minutes after police were called to the scene. He entered the UK as a very young child, was granted British citizenship in 2006 as a minor. The attack happened as worshippers gathered on Yom Kippur, the holiest day in the Jewish calendar. The UK's chief rabbi says the attack is the tragic result of an unrelenting wave of Jew hatred, while the Prime Minister told the Jewish community he'll do everything in his power to give them the security they deserve. But yesterday's tragic events didn't stop pro-Palestine protests from going ahead across the nation last night. 40 people were arrested, including on suspicion of assaulting the police, according to the Home Secretary. The Met Police are calling for such protests to be cancelled. Shabana Mahmood says the pro-Palestine marches that took place in the wake of the attack were dishonourable and fundamentally un-British.
don't want our Jewish community here in Britain to have to live a smaller Jewish life because of the fear of anti-Semitism. And it is really important that we all hold the line between that which is legitimate in our country, which is protest and so on, but that behaviour which crosses the line and breaks our laws. The laws of our land must be upheld, and I will ensure that they are.
Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick says anti-Semitism is a cancer in our society and must be stamped out.
This was the most gut-wrenching attack, and such sadness for the community in North Manchester and for, above all, the victims and their families. The Jewish community is shocked today, but I don't think it's surprised, because anti-Semitism and extremism has been allowed to grow and grow among us for far, far too long. And now we need to see action by government and by everyone, frankly, in society to root it out.
In other news, Dame Sarah Mullally has been named as the next Archbishop of Canterbury, the first time a woman has been appointed to the role in the Church of England's history. Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the appointment. She described the Manchester synagogue terror attack during her speech as horrific and warned that hatred and racism of any kind cannot be allowed to tear us apart. Originally from Woking in Surrey, she was the UK's chief nursing officer from 1999 to 2004. The announcement today comes almost a year after Justin Welby resigned from the role as spiritual leader of the Church of England due to a damning review into his handling of a sexual abuse scandal. In her first word since confirmation of her appointment, she said while the role is a huge responsibility, she feels a sense of peace and trust in God to carry her.
I'm deeply thankful to the people, the churches and communities of the Diocese of London. It is my deep privilege to have shared ministry with you for almost 8 years. It has not been easy to accept that I will be leaving you.
Elsewhere, TikTok's algorithm recommends pornography and highly sexualised content to children's accounts, according to a new report by a human rights campaign group. Researchers created fake child accounts and activated safety settings, but still received sexually explicit search suggestions. The suggested search terms led to sexualised material, including highly explicit videos. The platform says it's committed to safe and age-appropriate experiences and took immediate action once it knew of the problem. Storm Amy has been upgraded from a yellow to an amber warning for large parts of North and West Scotland. The Met Office has warned of widespread winds reaching 60 to 70 miles per hour, with more exposed areas seeing gusts in excess of 95. The warning's in place from 5 p.m. today until 9 a.m. tomorrow. And Prince William has said change is on my agenda when he becomes king in his most open and personal explanation to date about how he sees his future role and the future of the monarchy. The revelation came during a discussion with Hollywood actor Eugene Levy as they were filming at Windsor Castle for Levy's travel series The Reluctant Traveller. When asked if the monarchy will be shifting in a slightly different direction when he becomes king, William says, "I think it's safe to say that change is on my agenda. Change for good. And I embrace that and I enjoy that change." The Prince of Wales also opens up about being overwhelmed by family problems last year, as both Kate and the King were diagnosed with cancer, and his desire to try to make sure you don't do the same mistakes as your parents. Those are the latest headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.3448 and €1.1461. The price of gold is £2,871.18 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is currently at 9,482 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hello, welcome back. You're watching Britain's Newsroom. We're live across the United Kingdom on GB News with Alex and Miriam.
Well, one of the Manchester synagogue terror attack victims appears to have been shot by police, Greater Manchester Police has said. Let's cross live to Cromsall and speak to GB News North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper. Sophie, can you bring us up to date on this new breaking news?
Saying that one of the people who was injured
I can indeed. We've just heard that in the last few minutes from Greater Manchester Police as they've issued that latest update that, as you rightly say there, they believe that one of the victims deceased yesterday was accidentally shot by a Greater Manchester Police armed officer as they tried to bring an end to that terrorist attack. And I've got a statement here from Chief Constable Stephen Watson, and he said the Home Office pathologist has advised that he is provisionally determined that one of the deceased victims would appear to have suffered a wound consistent with a gunshot injury. It is currently believed that the suspect, Jihad al-Shami, was not in possession of a firearm, and the only shots fired were from GMP's authorised firearm officers as they worked to prevent the offender from entering the synagogue and causing further harm to our Jewish community. It follows, therefore, that subject to further forensic examination, this injury may sadly have been sustained as a tragic and unforeseen consequence of the urgently required action taken by my officers to bring an end to bring this vicious attack to an end. We've also been advised by medical professionals that one of the 3 victims currently receiving treatment in hospital has also suffered a gunshot wound, which is mercifully not life-threatening. It's believed that both victims, so the victim still in hospital and the victim that has been deceased, were close together behind the synagogue doors as worshippers acted bravely to prevent the attacker from gaining entry. So that is the latest update from Greater Manchester Police, that one of the 2 men who sadly died in that attack yesterday was, we now believe, we understand from Greater Manchester Police, did receive a gunshot wound from a Greater Manchester Police firearm officer as they deployed their weapons in order to try and bring an end to that attack. Of course, we know security and worshippers behind the doors of Heaton Park Synagogue were bravely barricading the doors in order to try and prevent that attacker from getting inside. Stephen Watson praising them yesterday for their bravery, which we now know could well have saved many more lives. But unfortunately, of course, and tragically, one of those men behind the door received a gunshot wound as Greater Manchester Police tried to end that attack that unfortunately ended his life.
Sophie Reaper, thank you for bringing us up to date on that.
Yeah.
Well, a statement has been released on what is believed to be on behalf of the al-Shami family. So let's speak to GB News' national reporter, Charlie Peters, who joins us in the studio. Charlie, bring us up to date.
Well, reports have suggested overnight that Jihad al-Shami's father, Farage, is a doctor, and it's been linked, a profile has been linked to Farage al-Shami on Facebook. And we've just seen a statement posted in the last 10 minutes or so from Farage al-Shami, which says that the news from Manchester regarding the terrorist attack targeting a Jewish synagogue has been a profound shock to us. The al-Shami family in the UK and abroad strongly condemns this heinous act, which targeted peaceful, innocent civilians. We fully distance ourselves from this attack and express our deep shock and sorrow over what has happened. Our hearts and thoughts are with the victims and their families, and we pray for their strength and comfort. We kindly request that all media outlets respect the family's privacy during this very difficult time and refrain from using this tragic event in any context that does not reflect the truth. May God have mercy on the innocent victims, and we pray for the swift recovery of the injured. And this is signed by Farage al-Shami, the al-Shami family, UK and abroad. Now, we've been bringing you an updated photo today, which has been shared online, of Jihad al-Shami holding a child, it appears to be a small child, which was posted by Farage al-Shami last year, which gives us a great degree of confidence that this statement being made on this profile is him, and that's that photo we can bring you now. That was posted by Farage al-Shami on his Facebook profile. So highly likely, we believe, that these profiles are linked, and this is a objectively their family statement being put out on social media moments ago. We should say that the family statement is also being shared on a profile which has a lot of posts about the war between Israel and Hamas, and also about the conflict in Syria, in particular praising the new Syrian leadership and wider commentary about the Middle East. And I'm sure we'll bring you some more updates as we get it about this family situation, as we're beginning to learn a bit more about the background of this attacker, his family, their background, their politics, but also now this statement they're putting out, refraining people against, as they say, using this tragic event in any context that does not reflect the truth. Unsure what he's referring to with that statement, but also urging mercy on the innocent victims and distancing themselves from the terror attack at that Manchester synagogue yesterday morning.
Yeah, interesting words that doesn't reflect the truth. I think some people will ask what the truth is. Their truth, at least, on this matter. So that'll be very interesting to dig into, Charlie.
And we need to mention that Keir Starmer is now visiting Crumpsall. Obviously, the government taking this extremely seriously. What do you think we can expect from his visit there at the scene?
Well, as we're hearing this quite shocking news coming from Greater Manchester Police, that 2 of the victims, 1 deceased, 1 injured, they say mercifully not in a life-threatening condition, was actually shot by the firearms officers of Greater Manchester Police. I imagine that some of what Keir Starmer is doing today, obviously reflecting the condolences and the support of the nation, of course, in his role as our political leader, but also engaging with Greater Manchester Police. He's arriving just moments before they put out that really stunning statement. But here are the pictures from earlier this morning as Sir Keir Starmer arrived at the scene alongside his wife Victoria, visiting the scene of the Manchester synagogue attack. Obviously, Victoria Starmer is Jewish. They both attended a synagogue last night, marking Yom Kippur. They held hands as they walked past those floral tributes and crossed the cordon to speak to police officers, which is what we're showing you now. And obviously this comes as the Prime Minister is dealing with a lot of criticism about how his office, his party, some are saying they've failed to tackle anti-Semitism and extremism in the country. But the Prime Minister has said to every Jewish person in this country, I want to say, I know how much fear you will be holding inside of you. And he expresses his solidarity and also his sadness that you still have to live with these fears. Nobody should have to do that. Nobody. Of course, it comes at a particularly fraught time for the Jewish community, not only with the political actions of this government in its actions with Israel, distancing itself from the war in terms of its support for Israel, blockading some of its arms deals with the country, but also more recently recognising Palestine as a state at the United Nations. So a lot of movement there, a lot of, stark reaction from the Jewish community in Britain. And also, we've heard Israeli ministers put the blame on the Prime Minister himself. That position firmly rejected by Shabana Mahmood on GBNews this morning.
Yeah, interesting stuff. It really, really is. We'll see how this plays itself out as the coming days, of course, go by. We just want to bring you some breaking news now, as actress Dame Patricia Routledge has died at the age of 96. She was best known for her role in the comedy TV show Keeping Up Appearances and Mrs. Bucket or Bouquet, and as Detective Hetty Weinthorpe. Just to repeat that breaking news there, sadly, Dame Patricia Routledge has died at the age of 96, best known, of course, for Keeping Up Appearances and Mrs. Bucket or Bouquet, and Detective Hetty Weinthorpe. Very sad things. Brilliant
series,
show.
very funny.
I remember Mrs. Bucket, one of the comedies that my grandma used to watch every weekend. It was just absolutely fantastic and iconic actress, iconic.
Indeed. I'm sure there'll be some wonderful tributes to her over the next few days. Well, let's return now to our top story about those Manchester synagogue attacks yesterday. And we have on the line now the journalist Angela Epstein. Angela, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Some breaking news in the last few minutes that some of the victims may have actually died from the police firearms officer not having been stabbed by the attacker as previously thought. A terrible time for the Jewish community in the UK.
It's absolutely horrifying. Even though we've talked of nothing else since the news broke yesterday morning, it's still very hard to process. Just to give
you some context, this is the synagogue of my childhood. It was my family's synagogue, so I spent many, many times there, you know, sitting in services or scampering around outside. And I also got married there. It's in the heart of the Manchester Jewish community, so it's not far from where I live. And I was awoken yesterday morning by the sound of helicopters circling overhead, very low, above us in the sky. And as I walked sort of through the street down the road to see what was going on, the place was thronged with police and security people. And it was just complete anathema to the kind of day that we'd all been expecting. It was Yom Kippur, as many people know now, the Day of Atonement, and the most solemn and holiest day of the Jewish calendar. So now to hear that, well, we heard fairly early on that people had been killed, and that now we sort of, it was killed in the whole chaos of it all, is just so impossibly difficult to process.
Angela, I was deeply disturbed by many images I saw last night of protesters, so-called protesters, out on the streets in major cities across the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister pledged to protect Jewish people. He said he would do everything he could, yet in London there were 40 people arrested for participating in a pro-Gaza march last night. Do you think the Prime Minister is holding up his end of the deal here to protect Jewish people?
I think the Prime Minister's a joke. This is a man who campaigned twice for Jeremy Corbyn to become leader of this country. So make no mistake about where his loyalties originally lay. He's a weather-vane Prime Minister who turns towards where he feels his political skin is more likely to be saved. The moment that he recognised the Palestinian state without it being contingent upon the release of the hostages or the disarming of Hamas was a terrible day for the Jewish community, because it was seen as a reward for terrorism, as witnessed by Hamas releasing a statement saying the recognition of that state was the fruit of October the 7th. For him now to come down the road from me and pay due respect to what has gone on here is so utterly disgusting. Because it means nothing. The fact that hate marches are filling our streets week after week, even in the light of an atrocity that took place which has no political meaning. I can't begin to emphasise enough to you, it's such a sombre and serene day, Yom Kippur. These were worshippers on their way to the synagogue for a day of reflection and prayer. It's not a political thing. Judaism is 5,000 years old or more. So for them to be targeted in this way was just old-fashioned Jew hatred. And then the disgusting people who take to the street, conflating that with what's happening in Israel, you know, a country that didn't want this war anyway and was itself the victim of a genocidal atrocity, is so disgusting. And we have a Prime Minister who's simply not getting a handle on this.
Angela, lots of commentators will say that it should be possible in our democracy to separate people's views and legitimate criticism about Israel and Israeli politics with an understanding that Jewish people should absolutely be respected, protected, that there is no excuse at all for any sorts of violence or discrimination against Jewish people. But do you think that that distinction is just too esoteric? It just gets lost in our politics, and particularly on social media, that it's frankly an impossible distinction?
It's an impossible distinction. First of all, if you look at some of the polling, and I'm involved in a lot of Jewish groups, I read a lot of sort of community places on social media where people exchange views. Although some people may have legitimate criticism of the Israeli government, which I completely understand, the large part of the Jewish population in this country are fundamentally Zionist in the sense that they recognition the right of the Jewish people to self-determination and to their ancient homeland, hopefully living side by side in peace with a secure Palestinian state as well. And so the idea that this extremist came out yesterday morning, driven by what? Was he either driven by pure hatred? We know the Hamas territory, the Hamas agenda is to wipe all Jews off the map, not just those in Israel. Or is it that anti-Semitism is a light sleeper, and the events of October 7th have given all those who hate the state of Israel and hate Jews some kind of legitimate way of fielding their argument? The fact that it's so utterly disrespectful to take to the streets the day after this happened. But if you cast your minds back, there were protests and marches the day after October 7th happened in London. Our streets have become, in areas, Jew-free zones. But I just want to say one other thing, though. I'm deeply patriotic. I believe in this country, and I believe in the really good, upstanding, fine people who make up the large part of this country, as witnessed by the volume of messages that have come in from non-Jewish friends, colleagues, people I haven't heard from in years, who just want to live peaceably and don't see a place for this kind of heinous extremism in our country.
Yeah, Angela, that has been the case in Britain for many years, but not so much anymore, unfortunately. No. Thank you so much for joining us, Angela Epstein, a journalist. Of course, we'll be talking more and more about this story. I'm sick of these protesters. They are vile. What they did last night was disgusting. It was despicable. They have no conscience, no shame. How can you have any shame going out and doing that on the night of Yom Kippur and on the night of a terrorist attack? Honestly, you should take a long, hard look at yourselves if you took part in that protest. You really should.
Well, that's certainly the message of the Home Secretary, isn't it, to people to stay at home and show some respect, but we shall see. Well, coming up next, Dame Patricia Routledge has died at the age of 96 and will be paying tribute to the beloved actress. She's best known, of course, for her role in the comedy TV show Keep Me Up Appearances, as Mrs Bouquet, or Bucket, and as the detective Hetty Weintraub.
You're with Britain's Newsroom, only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's 28 minutes past 11. You're still watching Britain's Newsroom with Alex and Miriam, and we've got our panel back in the studio, GP Dr Renee Honderkamp and political commentator Andy, whose surname I've temporarily forgotten.
Williams.
Williams. Of course. Apologies.
That's OK.
Shall we start with this news that Hyacinth Bouquet has passed away, or rather the actress that played her?
Yeah, Patricia Routledge, very sad. I mean, I must admit, I've barely seen any of Keeping Up Appearances.
No way.
I'll hand to Renee, but I do. What I do know is that she was like that character really resonated because it said so much about so many people in Middle Britain who were kind of, well, as the title says, keep up appearances, like just trying to be something that slightly more, you know, slightly different.
It was about aspiration, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She wanted to aspire to a station that was seen as above hers, and she did it beautifully. And that line, you know, it's not bucket, it's bouquet.
Okay.
But I think it will appeal to a certain age of people because, as you're younger than me, I know people will be surprised at that. But, yeah, it's certainly my era, and it was one of those TV programmes from a whole era of slightly politically incorrect that we adored to laugh at and we're now not allowed to.
Yeah, a comment here on your say said, Alex, you weren't that old. How were you that old? When you... But this was such an iconic TV show. It repeated, and my grandmother had DVDs, VHSs of it. Sorry, we play it on VHSs. Yeah, that's one of the 90s for you, and. It was just such a brilliant show, and it really did speak to Middle England, and I think that's why so many people loved it, didn't they? But I think we actually have a clip to show you. Let's see if we can throw to that clip for you.
My name is Bouquet, B-U-C-K-E-T. No, it's not bucket, it's bouquet. I can understand that you don't deliver just anywhere, but as I say, I do have the new vicar coming for tea and light refreshments, and I want 6 fresh cream cakes. That is a large order. Hello? Hello? Hoi polloi.
Are we on? Most of our young people won't even know what she's holding in her hand.
A wide landline. Yeah, they go, what is that? Dial up. Do you remember that? But yeah, the relationship she had with her husband, I can't remember his name in the show, but just iconic. It really, really was. And yeah.
And harking back to a time gone by, I'm not sure she would approve of people going to the supermarket in their pyjamas. Or the school one in their onesie.
But, you know, she was... How old was she? She
died in 96.
She has seen this country change. She's another example of one of those people that's seen our country change so much over the course of almost 100 years. What an incredible lifetime she lived indeed. Should we move on, shall we? Should we move on?
Yes, we understand that Nigel Farage has reacted to the attack at that synagogue in Manchester yesterday. Let's have a listen to what he said.
In response to this, the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, says she's disappointed. Disappointed. That's the most the Home Secretary can say. Well, I hope all of you watching this video are outraged. Outraged and, frankly, frightened. This is broken Britain. This is evidence of societal breakdown. It is deeply worrying and very frightening. Will this Prime Minister do anything about it? No, in fact, he's emboldened these people by his recognition of Palestine 2 weeks ago.
Of course, that was Nigel Farage, their leader of Reform UK. Andy, I'll pass this to you because you know, we spoke about this in the last part of the show. And, you know, I was saying there's this two-tier, there's this bigotry when it comes to outrage on things with this government, in my opinion, and some of the front bench and the Mayor of London. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for the podium statement from the Prime Minister condemning the far left for getting up and protesting last night. I'm still waiting for the condemnation of Islamist terrorism in Britain from the Prime Minister. Instead, what we've had is some very, what I would say, meagerly wet words from the front bench of the Labour Party. I mean, how can we be tackling extremism when we're not going to just go out and say it?
Well, there absolutely was a condemnation from people across the government, including the Prime Minister, of what happened yesterday, of what this was, which was
use the word
Islamist. Well, it doesn't matter. Look, everyone knows this was everyone knows.
That matters. I think
Alex, we don't actually yet know the motive. I mean, it seems obvious, and there's lots of assumptions we can make. But I think the Prime Minister is probably sensible in not assuming the motive before the detection.
On the protests. We have, you know, freedom of speech, they have to be allowed to go and do it. I think it's completely wrong. I think it was insensitive. I think, you know, if you want to go out and protest on Saturday and make an argument about the Palestinian statehood, that's up to you. You can agree or disagree with that. But anything that goes anywhere near celebrating what happened yesterday is a total disgrace, and I think that should be called out.
A brief word from you, Renee.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Little John in the Mail today that from woke police chiefs to left-wing politicians, the list of these killers and enablers are massive, and they are enablers. People on that march last night were saying things like, these are British people aged 42. I don't give about the Jewish community right now. All I care about is the flotilla.
Well, it's totally disgusting.
All right, well, off the back of that, let's get a 60-second news update with Tatiana Sanchez.
Thank you very much. The top stories. Yes, that breaking news that actress Dame Patricia Routledge has died at the age of 96. She was best known for her role in the comedy TV show Keeping Up Appearances as Mrs. Bouquet. One of the victims who died in the Manchester synagogue terror attack suffered a gunshot wound, Greater Manchester Police have said, as armed officers attempted to shoot the killer. It comes as the 2 men killed in the attack were named today by police. Sir Keir Starmer has welcomed the appointment of Dame Sarah Mullally as the first female Archbishop of Canterbury. It comes almost a year since Justin Welby resigned from the role of the spiritual leader of the Church of England due to a damning review into his handling of a sexual abuse scandal. TikTok's algorithm recommends pornography and highly sexualised content to children's accounts, according to a new report by a human rights campaign group. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in half an hour.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
OK, well, up at noon. Good afternoon, Britain, with Tom and Dawn. They're joining us now in the studio. Hello, both of you.
Hello. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed.
Did you message each other one?
We did.
You must have done.
Tom was comparing the size of our dots.
Yes.
I was. I said I've got bigger dots.
Yes.
Yeah.
Miriam and I compared the size of nothing, by the way.
Size doesn't always matter, Tom.
Yeah, it's how the dots are applied.
Exactly.
What's coming up on your show? Not dots, that's for sure.
No. Well, of course, we'll be following the continued coverage. Our primary story today, the terror attack that took place yesterday. We're learning more all the time about exactly what went wrong and particularly this police response. We're expecting quite a bit more news on that throughout the course of the programme.
Obviously more about the family. We've had the note from the family today. So many questions still to ask about that. And we're also talking to people about whether the protest should go ahead in London tomorrow. We've got someone that thinks they should, so that'll be an interesting debate. You don't want to miss that one.
Well, indeed, yeah. I certainly want to miss that one.
Well, thank you both very much. I'm sure there'll be some more live developments throughout your show, no doubt. Well, that's coming up at midday, but up next...
We'll be crossing back to Crumsall as Greater Manchester Police refer themselves to a police watchdog over the attack. That's as they appear to have shot one of the victims. This is Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Amy is on the way. Wind warnings have been issued across many parts of the UK, but with amber warnings for western Scotland and western parts of Northern Ireland, with Storm Amy expected to deepen very rapidly during the coming hours as it approaches the UK from the Atlantic. Initially, we've got the rain moving in. That's going to cause some issues across Northern Ireland, northwest England and western Scotland in particular, because we've had so much wet weather so far this week. That rain turning things very soggy indeed in the west, spells of rain further east as well. Then the wind whips up. Once the main band of rain moves through, that's when the strongest winds arrive to the south of the low pressure centre as Amy pushes into the northwest of Scotland. And it's across western Scotland and Northern Ireland where we are most concerned about the risk of damaging, disruptive and dangerous winds, peaking late afternoon into the evening, widely across northern parts of the UK, 50, 60, perhaps 70 miles an hour in some of the more exposed spots. But for western parts of Northern Ireland, risk of 80 mile per hour wind gusts and western parts of Scotland, particularly the Western Isles, the risk of 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts. So really serious wind speeds as Storm Amy moves through. Those winds peaking during the evening on Friday, but continuing very strong overnight across the north and west of Scotland in particular, Northern Ireland, northwest England, as well as north and west Wales. And it's going to be a blustery night across the whole of the UK as a band of heavy rain sweeps through. So lively conditions for many. Those warnings still in force as we begin Saturday. The wind only slowly moderating through the day. In fact, it's actually increasing across the far north of Scotland, including Shetland and Orkney, with some heavy rain and showers moving through here. A blustery day for many of us, the wind turning colder as well. It's going to feel fairly miserable out there as the showers rush in from the west, but there will be some brightness in between the downpours.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 20 to 12 and this is Britain's Newsroom with me, Alex Armstrong, and Miriam Cates. And of course, we're going to be talking about this continuing developing story on the synagogue attack yesterday, the terror attack in Manchester. And we'll bring you Sophie Reaper in just a moment. But you know, this is a really developing story. Of course, I wasn't expecting to hear this news that the police, of course, have accidentally shot someone.
Yeah.
Very sad. And of course, I have deep sympathy personally with the police because they have to act in these situations. From what we could see in that picture, that man looked like he was wearing some sort of suicide belt with explosives, and had the police not acted, many more lives could have been lost.
Yeah, had he got inside the building and had that bomb been a viable device, the casualty list would have been huge. Very, very difficult being police officer in that situation. They did respond so quickly. Well, let's go now to our northwest of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, who is in Crumpsall for us. Sophie, what's the reaction been to this breaking news about the death of one of the victims being caused probably by police bullets?
OK, understood. I'll wait for your cue. Well, I think what you say there is absolutely right. It leaves Greater Manchester Police in a very, very difficult position. Of course, as you rightly say, they did what they had to do. That the suspect was wearing that belt, which was potentially an explosive device. The worshippers inside the synagogue were doing what they could to prevent him from getting inside. He was holding a knife. He'd already rammed into the gates of the synagogue in his vehicle. As you say, GMP armed officers, Plato, which is the national response to marauding terrorism, had been issued as well as a major incident. Those firearm officers were simply doing their line of duty, and tragically, this member of the public who was killed, we now know, or it's now believed, by a gunshot wound. He was killed in the line of fire as he tried to protect his fellow worshippers, his fellow members of the Jewish faith, and that is incredibly, incredibly sad. But I'm sure his loved ones and his friends and family will want to take away from that actually he acted with bravery and with courage.
Thank you so much. That's Sophie Reaper there for us in Crumpsall. We'll look forward to you bringing us more news on that, Sophie. Thank you very much. And joining us now is columnist for the Daily Mail, Dan Hodges. Dan, thank you for joining us. A very sombre day. We certainly feel it here in the studio speaking to guests. I want to go in quickly on a point you've been making on the internet, which is there are tweets claiming that marches, banning marches, should I say, are rare, but you've highlighted the fact that they are regularly administered. Tell us more about that and why you think the government, or do you believe at least the government, should be banning these protests over the next few days?
Well, I've got to be honest. I mean, I've been quite shocked by the government's response, not necessarily to the original appalling attacks, but last night we obviously had these statements from both the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary that they were going to look to stand with the Jewish community and do everything they could to protect the Jewish community in the wake of these attacks. But then we saw, frankly, the appalling scenes on our streets last night as across Britain, in London and other major metropolitan cities, people went out, frankly, and I'm going to be completely honest about this, appeared to be reveling in what had happened. Obviously, they were conducting themselves under the facade of supporting Palestine, but we saw in the hours following the murder of 2 Jews at their place of worship, we saw people openly chanting in the streets for the death of Jews. We heard that chant, death to the IDF, and we again heard chants calling for the eradication of Israel, the world's only Jewish state. And I assumed when we saw this, and there was widespread revulsion at that, I assumed that this morning we would be hearing the government was going to act. But instead, we had the spectacle of Shabana Mahmood trying to appeal to the best nature of these protesters by asking for them not to march. She then said she doesn't have the power to ban marches. And I think it was on one of your programs this morning, then tried to downplay the impact marches like this this can have on the wider security of the Jewish community by saying that the only person responsible for the attacks was the man who perpetrated the attacks, which was wrong, I think, in terms of obviously there's going to be a need to look at the underlying issues around this, but also, on a point of law, 3 other people are currently in custody in relation to these attacks. And I thought that was an incredibly irresponsible statement from a serving Home Secretary.
Dan, lots of politicians have obviously called out these attacks. We've just heard a statement from Nigel Farage blaming it on societal breakdown. And of course, lots of people have sympathy with that point of view. But do you think we need to be more specific? We are talking about Islamism here. We're particularly talking about a point of view that doesn't see Israel as a legitimate country, that thinks that there is a legitimate case for harming, sometimes killing Jews. We've seen some polling published a year ago by JL Partners. Only 1 in 4 British Muslims believe that Hamas committed murder and rape in Israel October the 7th. Do you think we need to be more specific about what we're talking and not just call it societal breakdown?
Well, I think, as you said, we have to wait to find the details of what motivated this attacker. But certainly we've seen in other instances of this kind that a major factor is what I would call Islamist radicalisation and broader Islamist radicalisation. We have, as you're aware, we have an entire security apparatus and de-radicalisation infrastructure, which is geared to tackling the underlying causes and underlying contributory factors to these appalling attacks. As I was saying online today, and that goes across the political spectrum, when we've seen appalling attacks conducted by the far right, such as the terrible murder of Joe Cox. I remember the attack, the bombing by the far right of the Admiral Duncan pub in London. Obviously, the appalling Anders Breivik attack on Atoya Island. In each of those instances, people on the left, people like Shabana Mahmood, people like myself, frankly, have been clear that there are underlying issues. That we cannot simply attribute this to just a lone wolf attack.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Dan. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. As columnist for the Daily Mail there, Dan Hodges. And, of course, moving on next, the new Archbishop of Canterbury is a woman. But has the Church of England gone woke? I think I know the answer to that question. You're with Britain's Newsroom on GB News.
welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here.
I'm Michelle Juber, Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection, tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Juber, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
No,
isn't it?
no,
Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, while we've been on air this morning, the new Archbishop of Canterbury has been announced as Sarah Mullally. She'll become the 106th Archbishop and the first female in the role.
We're now joined by priest at the Holy Trinity in Winchester, Reverend Dr. Jamie Franklin. Dr. Jamie, thank you very much for joining us. I have some concerns personally, as a Protestant and a member of the Anglican Church, that I believe this appointment is rather political, looking back at Sarah Mullally's tweets and political history. Should other Christians as part of the Church be worried?
Well, I don't think we should be worried because Christ commands us not to be anxious, but I think it's legitimate to be deeply disappointed by this appointment. You know, just to say, to begin with, I don't wish any ill will to Sarah Mullally personally. I wish her all the best as a person, but she has consistently advocated for heterodox positions on pretty much everything that I'm aware of. She was all right on assisted dying. She was quite good on that, but she's been heterodox on marriage, sexual relationships. She's said that she's pro-choice. And there are various other things that I could mention. The fact that she's a woman, I think, is deeply problematic. A majority of the Anglican Communion doesn't accept women bishops. So it's hugely divisive. Over 2/3 of the Anglican Communion, so 55 million plus out of 85 million, doesn't accept heterodox views on marriage and sexuality. So it's a deeply divisive and troubling appointment.
Now, I don't want to put words into her mouth, but no doubt she and many others of a more liberal persuasion would say that the Church needs to be more relevant. What do you say to that?
Well, I think the gospel is always relevant, but it's relevant because it doesn't change, even though the culture changes. You know, our source of authority is Scripture and the traditional interpretation of Scripture, as it's always been throughout the last 2,000 years. If we change it in order to be relevant to the current moment, we will become an irrelevance. That is what is happening at a meta level in the Church of England. I'd just like to say as well, there are many parishes up and down this country where people are faithfully toiling for Christ and for the gospel, where great things are happening. You know, people are becoming Christians. I've got young men coming into my church, visiting every week. Great stuff is happening. And this is not
Reverend Dr. Jamie Franklin, thank you so much for joining us. Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but a pleasure to have you. We're now going to hand it over to Tom and Dawn for Good Afternoon Britain.
That's right, so much to come on Good Afternoon Britain. More facts being learnt every moment about the terror attack that took place yesterday in Manchester.
And we'll be asking the important question, should any Palestinian protest go ahead this weekend? And we have someone defending them. You don't want to miss what they've got to say.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hi there and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Storm Amy is on the way. Wind warnings have been issued across many parts of the UK, but with amber warnings for western Scotland and western parts of Northern Ireland, with Storm Amy expected to deepen very rapidly during the coming hours as it approaches the UK from the Atlantic. Initially, we've got the rain moving in. That's going to cause some issues across Northern Ireland, northwest England and western Scotland in particular, because we've had so much wet weather so far this week. That rain turning things very soggy indeed in the west, spells of rain further east as well. Then the wind whips up. Once the main band of rain moves through, that's when the strongest winds arrive to the south